So good morning, everyone. My name is Cynthia Cruz. I'm the Business Relations Specialist for OOD in the Great Southwest. So prior to coming to OOD, I had 20 years of management experience, 13 years of that being owning my own business. After that, I spent 5 years in business services for Ohio Means Jobs, and then I've been with OOD for about 4 years now. Through that time, I literally have perused thousands of resumes. I have several passions in life: chocolate, Billy Joel, the Bengals, and resumes, well-written resumes. So hopefully we won't insult anybody's intelligence here today. My goal when I go to a presentation is if I can capture one new thought from it, then I feel like it's worth my while. So I know I'm in the room with seasoned professionals, so hopefully if I can at least impart one new thought to you in the next 40 minutes, we'll have been successful, okay? When speaking about resumes, there are 4 different styles out there. The first being chronological, and when we talk about a chronological resume, how does that look? Okay, so date of order, and you're gonna see the most recent job first, and then going down accordingly through time. Very good. How about functional? Experience that has something to do with their objective, which we're going to talk about in a second. But yes, geared more towards their experience. All right. And then we have 2 other, the targeted and the combination. So the targeted would be what we want to utilize with our people who have white-collar professions. Does anybody know what I talk about when I say white-collar professions? Okay, so more desk or business or something that you've got a lot of training for, an admin, clerical, professional type role. Yeah, so you definitely want to be using the targeted resumes for those, and those would be resumes where you are actually changing to hit the keywords that are found in those professional jobs in that position description. And then the final being the combination, which we won't even talk about today, but it's in your handout if you really want to challenge. So up here I've got objective versus profile statement. Ladies and gentlemen, if you are still using an objective on your resume, you are screaming out to the universe, I don't know what's happened in the world of work in the past 10 years. The objective statement died about 8 to 10 years ago. Do not put an objective on the resume, because you are showing owners, you are showing HR professionals that it is not current and that you have not kept up with the times. And why is that? Why did the objective die? What the objective statement had done for years and years and years is said what that individual wanted from the employer. And the most trite, most hackneyed objective statement that was used over and over again was what? Because I know you all saw it or used it at some point, because that's what your teacher said in high school. To utilize my skills and abilities to advance through the ranks of your company. Which said what? Nothing about what you were going to do for the employer, but everything about what they were going to do for you. And you weren't even hired yet. You hadn't even entered the first position they wanted, and you're already talking about what they're going to do for you to help you advance in your career. So that's why it died. So you see up there. So an objective, one example, up here, desired technical editing position with supervisory responsibilities in engineering firm. What are the 2 things that employers really care about when we get down to brass tacks? 2 things. What, if I am a private sector employer, do I care about? Making money, thank you very much. So number 1 is making money. So making money or saving money. Number 2 would be saving time. So what we want to try and do in that profile statement is hit at the employer's needs. So how are we going to make them money or save them money, and how are we going to save them time? And we can see in the profile statement how we've done that. So now we've switched from that objective up there to highly skilled technical writer, 3 years publishing experience, knowledgeable in current web design technology, experienced communicator and team player. So what did that tell me? That I do not have to take time training this individual on the publishing experience or the current web design technology. Do we see how that draws that out for the employer much more so than even a halfway decently worded objective. So, how many of you guys are familiar with onetonline.org? So we're going to go ahead and click on that. If you're not familiar with it, I suggest that you hop on that at some point and play around with it, like Leslie's going to do for me right now. So, when you're trying to form a resume for an individual and you're looking at their career goal, if they've had any type of experience whatsoever, and you're trying to figure out how to word what they've done, this is your easy kind of dummy's guide to writing a resume. Click on onetonline.org and somebody shout out a profession that we work with a lot of our individuals with, and you might want to figure out how I can word this and not have to really think about how I'm going to create that verbiage. Janitorial, all right. Can you plug in janitorial there for me, Leslie? So, what this is going to do typically is give you not only the main subject, the main category, but it's also going to give you some offshoots, so it's going to hopefully explode your career search possibilities for this individual as well. So it's going to hopefully suggest some other categories that are related that you can be looking for as well. But also up here you'll see in those subcategories you're going to see some icons. So you'll see up there's some sunburst icons. That means that there is a bright outlook. So again, the Department of Labor, they've looked at the projections in that particular career field. I think we've got it currently through the year 2024 to see what the kind of increase is going to be in that particular vocational category. So, since we want to make sure that we're putting individuals in jobs that are going to be a great category to be in for several years down the road, let's go ahead and click on one that has one of the bright outlook icons. Okay, and so immediately we're able to find out that we can have some bullet points where we don't really have to think about how to create the verbiage for them. We're going to sit with that individual, we're going to look at that tasks, and we're going to say, Mr. and Ms. Job Seeker, which of these did you do in that past role? Service cleaner, supply restrooms, gather and empty trash, mix water, et cetera, et cetera. So now we've automatically got created for us some bullet points. All right, Leslie, can you scroll down a little bit for me? Let's keep going. So then we've also got in there, if we need to amplify it a little bit more, some of the work activities that we can build some other bullet points out of. Detailed work activities as well as the regular work activities. Again, we can scroll down a little bit more. The other thing that this is helpful for is we can see if the counselor is trying to decide, this is probably not the best example, in trying to decide if you need higher education for a custodial position, but if we were looking at another particular category and trying to decide, does it make sense for a counselor to pay for additional certification or additional training for this individual, we can look right here and see. For individuals who are currently employed in that role, 72% of them have a high school diploma or equivalent, 19% have less than a high school diploma, and 7% have a bachelor's degree. Does it make good economical sense? You guys are taxpayers too. Should OOD be using taxpayer funds to send this individual to get a bachelor's degree for a custodial position? Thank you very much. Good use of taxpayer dollars. Glad to see that. So, just another guide for that. And then if you want to scroll down a little bit more for me, Leslie. Okay, so when you are filling out those online applications for our individuals, many times when you get on that online website, there is a box where you have to fill out what is the desired salary or what is the desired wage per hour. And many times, if you don't fill that out, what happens? It won't go any further, right? It makes you put something in. So you can hop on onetonline.org and you can see that median wage. And I would suggest that you also hop onto the state wages. We won't do it right now for the sake of time, but hop onto the state wages to get that median wage for Ohio, because typically Ohio's median wage is going to be lower. And that at least gives you a hopping off point to fit something in that box. If you're not that familiar with that job and with that employer, it gives you a starting point so you can continue on with that application. And again, we can see for this particular occupation, the projected growth is 5% to 8% through 2024, and the projected job openings nationally. Again, if we had time, we could go into the state trends and see how many openings there were going to be for the state of Ohio. So again, useful information if you're trying to decide between a couple different vocational categories to pursue with that individual. All right, thank you. Okay, so we talked about that employers care about time and money, right? There are some other things that they do want to know about as well, and that is they want to know that you can learn that job quickly, again, saving them time, and also that you're going to do the work and be cooperative. So how do we best demonstrate that? And it is with what we've heard probably several times in this career, and that is transferable skills. Transferable skills can be divided into 3 different categories, and hopefully you've got the handouts for that. So you have your hard skills, you have your soft skills, and you have your job-related skills. Well, we've already totally captured that, the job-related skills, with ONET Online. So those are the ones that are going to be unique to that specific occupation. You should have gotten a transferable skills analysis and checklist. When you're sitting down with the individual and trying to determine what else can we put on this resume, how can we flesh it out, this is a really easy way, 2 pages, simple to check through with them as you're talking with them. Check every single one that they think that they possess. That's your starting point, that transferable skills analysis and checklist. And again, these are skills that can be demonstrated. Then you should also be looking at soft skills. And again, those are ones that are character related. Are you punctual? Are you honest? Etc. Once you've had a chance to get through all of those lists and discuss that with the individual, you then can move to the self-assessment tool. And that self-assessment tool, again, breaks it down into those 3 different categories. And with the resume, you want to make sure for every listing that you have for every position that you have at least 3 to 5 bullet points for every position. And this self-assessment tool then sets you up for that, so that you can put those in there. So you're going to take all those checklists and you're going to narrow it down to the 3 to 5 bullet points for each of those roles that fit onto that from that checklist. And how do we determine which ones we're going to do? If we've got a bunch and we're going to narrow it down. What we want to do is choose the ones that when it comes time to an interview that we can talk about with an employer and give examples of to that employer. Because so many of the interviews these days have moved to the STAR method or behavioral type interviews where they want examples. So it's a really great tool to be able to put those key ones on the resume as a cheat sheet for when you get into the interview, as well as for the employer to see those ones that you then can give those real life examples and relate back to. So you should also have received a tool that myself and my colleague from Toledo developed, along with the Director's Advisory Group. So it should be the DAG Resume Tip Sheet. This should become your new best friend if you have not become friends with it already. Because this is what the counselors are being tasked to look at when you submit them a resume, to make sure that that resume adheres to all the guidelines in this resume tip sheet. If the resume does not adhere to this tip sheet, the counselor can reject it and send it back. Why would they do that? We just came off a series of 3 out of 4 job fairs in National Disability Employment Awareness Month. One in Toledo, one in Cincinnati, and one in Columbus. Very successful job fair. So in Cincinnati, the one that I worked with my team on, we had 56 employers who showed. We had 6 employers who did not show. We staffed booths for those 6 employers that did not show. I then personally hand-delivered the resumes from those 6 booths that we staffed with OOD members to collect resumes for those employers. There were 80 resumes from those 6 employers that I was delivering. Does anybody want to take a guess at how many of those 80 were acceptable and came within the basic guidelines of this 1-page resume tip sheet? 80 resumes. How many? 10's too high. 5's too high. 3 out of 80. Please, 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 please. Keep the resume clean and simple. You don't use photos. You don't use personal pronouns. Personal pronouns meaning I, me, my, and mine. They do not appear on resumes. They can appear in the cover letter, but not in the resume itself. While we're speaking of that, personal pronouns in a cover letter. There are 3 documents for job seeking. They must be consistent. Those are the cover letter, the resume, and the reference sheet. They should have the same font, style, size, and formatting on all 3 of those sheets. Standard 8.5 by 11, big debate out there. Should resumes be 1 page or should they be 2 pages? If you have less than 10 to 15 years of professional experience, really it should be into 1 page. Now, if you're in academia, scientific research, things of that nature, then it could be longer than that. But if there's less than 10 to 15 years of professional experience, it should be able to be summed up in 1 page. Clearly, there's exceptions. I say a resume is like a piece of art. How many of you guys have been to a contemporary museum of art? How many of you said, I think my 5-year-old could do that? Okay, so beauty is in the eye of the beholder, clearly, all right? So certainly there's going to be some debate on that. All right, 1-inch margin on all 4 sides of the page, avoid fancy fonts. What are the 2 fonts that are typically recommended for a resume by most employers? Times New Roman and Arial would be the 2 preferred. You're going to proofread for spelling and factual errors. We've got these great devices on our computers, spell check and grammar check. Do they catch everything? No, because the English language is funny. So make sure that you get a second set of eyes on it. Because one of the most overused phrases on a resume is detail-oriented. And one of my favorite things to do, because, I like circling in red pen mistakes in the Cincinnati Enquirer, mistakes in Time Magazine, spelling and grammar. I know it's strange, but, bear with me. So one of my favorite things to do when I was an employer is look. If somebody had said detail-oriented, I was going to make a game out of it and look through that resume and find the error, because then what can I do? Circular file it, right? So another secret. Employers aren't necessarily reading resumes to find out who they're going to choose. Many times, because of the sake of time, they're reading through those resumes to see who they can get rid of, right? Because that's the quick thing. Because the average time spent reading a resume is what? So roughly, if you do a good one, it's 2 to 3 hours prepare, and the average time spent reading a resume by a human is 10 to 20 seconds. So again, they're looking through that, trying to find the errors on it, because you said you're detail-oriented, and I'm pitching it out the window because you've totally violated what you said. All right, do not state references available upon request. So in the graveyard of resumes, there's one headstone for objectives. The next headstone for what died is references available upon request. HR managers look at that as being insulting when they see that on a resume. Why would they find that insulting? You're going to give those references to them if they want them. So why waste their time and why waste space on that resume by saying references available upon request? Ladies and gentlemen, that 8.5 by 11 piece of paper is like real estate. How do you rent or buy real estate? What do you pay for? Square footage. So you pay for square footage. You're buying or renting based on how many square feet of real estate there is. Every square inch of this piece of paper is valuable real estate. So don't waste your square footage by putting references available upon request. All right, so I did not give you guys any handouts on action words, or what are sometimes referred to as sizzle words. There's plenty of them online. You can find lists of 50, list of 500, Action words, sizzle words. Why do we call them sizzle words? How many of you have been to a Mexican restaurant and ordered fajitas? Yeah, okay, that's my favorite. So, when the fajitas are coming to your table, you know before it even comes to your table. Why? The sizzle, right. You can hear it, you can smell it, and it does what? Yeah, whets your appetite, right? So that's what we want to do with the action words or sizzle words. We want to whet the employer's appetite for what this candidate can do for them. Keywords. Keywords from job descriptions. So again, we want to look at the job description, and we want to try and marry the words in our resumes to that. So we're going to look at position descriptions in that particular industry and find out what are those keywords. What are those words that are used over and over again in position descriptions? And the reason why we want to do that is, number one, we want the employer to be able to easily see how this candidate translates into a good employee for them. But number two, just in case it's not a human reading it, because in a lot of cases it's not a human reading it anymore, it is what we call applicant tracking systems, sometimes called robo-HR or HR bots. And what is that? That is a computer program that this human resource department or this employer has used to try and what? Maximize time. Again, we said employers are all about saving time. So this is their time-saving device. For most professional positions with Fortune 500 companies today, not that all our candidates are looking at that, but just for an example, there are roughly 200 candidates for every open position. Can you imagine the time, even if it's only 10 to 20 seconds, trying to read through 200 resumes for every position that's open in a Fortune 500 company or a hospital or educational institution? So this HR bot program, they program in 10 keywords, 15 keywords. If that resume or that application that you are submitting for that job seeker does not have that exact wording and that exact number that they've programmed in, the resume is automatically kicked out, or the application is automatically kicked out. A human reading that resume or application can synthesize and say, oh, that word is a synonym for this, so I know that they really still meet those qualifications. That applicant tracking system is not that smart. It has to be the exact word. So that's why it's really, really crucial that you use those keywords that are used in that specific job description. And not only in the resume, not only in the application, but again, for our individuals, and I realize it's a smaller percentage, but for our individuals who are looking for professional positions, it needs to be in their LinkedIn profile as well. Current statistic for those white-collar professions, Fortune 500 companies, hospitals, educational institutions, 94% are not even advertising the position on their website, not advertising that position on Indeed or Monster or Ohio Means Jobs first. They are going and using an applicant tracking system to scan through active LinkedIn profiles. So you don't even know it, but they have run a program to start looking through your profile to see who matches with those keywords in the geographic preference that they've set up. All right, so now we've got our baseline resume because we've used onetonline.org. We've done our transferable skills, soft and hard. We've used that checklist, and now we have what basically is going to turn out to be a grade letter of a C resume because it's just average. So how are we going to get it to a letter grade of an A resume? Clearly, by adding size, volume, money, time, and results. So we've got that ONET online description up here for a carpenter. All right, so those are the exact bullet points that we've taken from ONET online for that carpenter. Utilize tools, able to measure, mark, and draw, build and fabricate numerous items. That's an okay resume. And why is it just an okay resume at this point? Do we think that maybe every carpenter who's applying for this job has probably done those 3 bullet points? Yeah, so you're not standing out from the competition. You're doing what everybody else did. So how do we stand out? We know our individuals have a harder time trying to find work than a lot of individuals without disabilities. So it's even more crucial that we make it unique. And we do so by adding size, volume, money, time, and results, as you see, instead of just utilize tools, Now we've got tools operated, 2,000 plus hours of experience with whatever those things are, because I can't operate any of them. Then we've got measure, marked, and help draw. Compiled specs for a custom-built desk. Modified blueprints for a 2,500 square foot retail showroom. Drew plans to create a reproduction of Lincoln bed. Why is that important? Shows an example of work, unique work, right? I don't think every carpenter that's applying for that job can probably do custom-built work. I don't think probably every carpenter that's applying for that job has done a 2,500 square foot retail showroom or drew plans to create a reproduction of the Lincoln bed. So again, very, very unique, very specific skill set. And again, it's illustrating to the employer how it's going to save them time and hopefully earn them money with all that kind of custom-built work. Help fabricate. 90 linear feet of raised panel wainscoting for the courthouse, 375 square foot home office with built-in desks, 288 square foot hospital intensive care nursing station. Why are those designations important? Big sites out in the community? Right. So, home office, so we know that they can do residential work. Courthouse and nursing station, we know that they can do private sector or commercial work. Got to be really careful when I say this next phrase because there's so many head honchos from central office in here. I work for the government. What do we know about government? We have some crazy rules, right? We have some crazy policies and procedures and rules and guiding principles. We're different. We're very different from private sector. So it's really crucial that they've added in here about the courthouse. Because why? It's a government entity. So now I know if I'm hiring this carpenter that he knows how to navigate all those crazy rules and guidelines and policies and procedures and all that other stuff that you don't necessarily encounter with private sector work. Same thing with the hospital intensive care nursing station. Because again, hospitals have a very different set, a very unique way of dealing with contractors that are on site, with all the HIPAA violations and all that kind of stuff. Okay? So do we see how we took a C resume and now have bumped it up to become more of an A? And hopefully you feel empowered now with those handouts and with this little reminder, refresher, to do the same. Unfortunately, this individual did not. So, I know it's probably a little bit hard to read there, but this, in my first couple months of being on the job 4 years ago, was an actual resume from the Great Southwest, but it's a not so great resume. And this is one we actually paid for. Kind of makes me sick, but for those of you who do have the handouts or those of you who have super spidey sense and can see the print on the screen there, what do you see that's maybe a little bit less than perfect? Objective, right. So we know we're getting that out of here. All right, what else? References, yep, references are going away. I kind of did that little thing to disguise what the person's names were on that, but yes. References are out of here. What else? Margins are kind of crazy, yep. Bullets are not consistent, correct? If you have any type of advanced degree, be it associate's, bachelor's, master's, whatever, there's no need to list the high school. It's assumed. Again, don't waste that valuable space on something that's already assumed. What else? There's tons more. So again, since we've got some work history, your professional experience should always go before education if there is some professional experience, with two exceptions. Number one, if someone has been in a career for a number of years and now is finding that they need to change vocations and go to a different vocation, and the education that they have received recently is more applicable to that new vocational field, then we make the case to put education before experience. The second exception being if there's no professional experience whatsoever, the person's just been a student, then clearly education is going to go first. But in any other situation, I as the employer don't care about education as much as I do experience if you've already had time in that field. Okay? All right, what else? There's a lot more wrong with this thing. Inconsistent dates of employment, yep. Career experience is backwards, okay. So it's not chronological. You could put education / training / certifications into one section there. There's absolutely no description in that experience section of what the heck they did. So were they a public speaker one time in October of 2013? What did they speak on? Who'd they speak to? What was the size of their audience? We don't know anything of that. Tutor, what the heck did they tutor? We don't have a subject. We don't know, again, how many students. We don't know what level. None of that. While we're on this, just real quickly, I'm going to hop back to functional resumes. So functional resumes are probably best suited for a lot of our individuals. They are not the preferred format for employers, but the functional format, and again, you can flip back to those sheets, but the functional format is going to hopefully capture their attention with all the great work that you did, not just your titles, but hopefully all the great work that you did, and hit them with that up front in that 10 to 20 second scan, and then you're going to put down at the bottom those years of experience. And what that functional resume does at that point is, again, if that employer has 10 to 20 seconds to scan that resume, they're looking at the good stuff first. In the functional format, when you're looking at the professional experience, it's going to help hide those gaps in experience down towards the bottom, or scant experience at the bottom, or if it hasn't been really recent work history. So, again, eventually they're going to see it, but we hope to capture their attention up front, which this is definitely not doing. Anything else? So it's not necessarily wrong to use bold formatting, but the fact that it's not consistent throughout would be problematic. All right, I think we've killed this enough, so we'll move on. All right, so when I first started in this position, I was told, well, the bulk of our applicants are in fields that don't require a resume. And, you can't really do a resume with size and time and money and make it unique with accomplishments for the preponderance of the fields that our individuals are trying to find jobs in. So I already told you that I love a challenge when I'm looking through resumes to find those errors. So I took this challenge on and came up with a way to make unique qualifiers to add scope and quantifiable commentary to the resumes. So under admin, if you're looking for somebody who's just in a basic entry-level administrative clerical role, how do we add size, time, money, volume, scope to that? So typing words per minute is pretty obvious. Accuracy rate, maybe not quite as obvious, the percentage there. Software programs, again, on most, but the volume of files and data entry, really, really key. Number of files and data entry handled in a week or in a month. Detail-oriented, we've already talked about. We better make sure that everything's super correct if you're going to use that. If the individual works in retail, was there a sales quota? Did you meet it? Did you exceed it regularly? The percentage increase, if there was any. Even if it's a small dollar value, it might make the percentage increase. Add-on sales. Again, every time I go to Macy's, they're asking me, did you want to get a pair of socks or a belt or something with that? That's add-on sales. We want to take credit for that. Loss prevention. If you ever help stop a shoplifter. Again, something else to add on there. Customer comments or letters. Again, I just referenced Macy's. I don't know how many of you guys ever shopped at a Shillito's long, long ago, but they used to have on the employee name badges little apples. And the apples stood for every time the associate got a complimentary letter from a customer. So again, we want to take credit for that. Highest volume of customers served in a shift. So what month do we think in retail we want to talk about the highest volume number of customers served in a shift? November, December, right, for holiday, because what happens then and what are we explaining by showing that highest number of customers served in a shift? More money, more people, working under pressure, because with more people comes what? What comes with supervising more people? More problems, absolutely. So again, it shows us how we can resolve conflict and how we can deal with the scope of conflict. All right, fast food restaurants. Was your drawer always in balance? That's incredibly important. Again, when I owned a business, that was absolutely important, that my employees always had the drawers in balance. Add-on items there. Supervisory tasks ever undertaken. That is a great one for any job, for any occupation. Even if it was just simply, the manager one night asked you to do the bank deposit or asked you to lock up the store. Take credit for that. Employee of the month is obvious. Same thing for labor or production quotas met. Any suggestions, again, for any career, any suggestions that were ever accepted by a supervisor, by management, for making a task quicker or less damage, or again, our big things, earning money, saving time. Extra shifts accepted, again, for any career. Again, you can say all day long, oh, I give 110%. But by saying I continuously accepted extra shifts, it's a much more powerful statement. Safety ratings. For a janitorial, just like we talked about with the carpenter, commercial versus residential, very different skill sets. Largest square footage. Can you use floor buffers? Again, something I don't have to train you on and take time on. For our students, relevant courses, their attendance. Awards are obvious. Pertinent activities are obvious. Related conferences or seminars. Those, again, show a level of interest in a subject matter and also of experience and responsibility. For our stay-at-home parents, volunteer activities are pretty obvious, but what may not be so is if they were involved with a fundraiser, let's get the percentage increase in the fundraiser on there. Let's get the scope of the budget. For some of these athletic booster associations, they're tens of thousands of dollars. Take credit for that volume, for that time, for that money in that matter. The number of volunteers supervised, because what did we just say? As the number of people goes up, what else goes up? Yeah, responsibility and number of problems, conflict and all that kind of stuff. And clearly skills refresher steps. So even for our students, if the only professional experience they ever had was mowing the lawn or babysitting, there's still a way to add scope to that. And we do that through client growth. Meaning, if you started out cutting the lawn or babysitting for one family, freshman year, and by senior year, you've got 2 or 3 families, that's client growth, and you can add a percentage to that for that growth. Or even if you didn't increase the number of people you were doing those jobs for, you can still talk about, from freshman year to senior year, having repeat business, that you were invited back to do that task for the 4 years or 3 years or whatever it may be. Safety, value-added services. What else might you have a babysitter do besides watch your kids? Cook? Sign me up. I need a babysitter because I hate to cook. Cook, what else? Bathe, yeah? Housekeeping. Again, I'm signing this babysitter up. Housekeeping, that's awesome. Transportation, yes. Assist with homework. Errands, bill payment. So do you see how we just took one bullet point and made about 6 out of it? I'll add one more. Administering medication sometimes as well. Again, level of responsibility and safety related. Okay, and again, taking credit for anything that's over and above that expected work assignment. So you also find in the handout materials, again, I'm not going to hit on it real quickly for the sake of time, but for our individuals who are applying for Schedule A opportunities with federal jobs, you want to make sure that you are adhering to the actual resume builder on USA Jobs, because resumes for federal jobs are extremely different than those used in the private sector. So make sure you're using that. And also when it comes to Schedule A opportunities, for lack of a better word, the set-aside programs for individuals with disabilities, or in some cases for veterans, make sure that we are not just applying for Schedule A, but also for non-competitive and direct hiring authority when it comes to those jobs. So with that cover letter that I said, we're going to make sure that we have consistent style, size, font, and formatting, separate reference sheet, separate cover letter, separate resume, but all of that is going to be consistent in formatting. When it comes to the cover letter, only about 50% of individuals use a cover letter today. Really crucial for our candidates, because in there we can explain why there's a gap, why that happened, if the individual so desires, and it'll help explain, hopefully, to that individual who's scanning the resume why that occurred. We want to make sure in that cover letter we have 4 very, very short paragraphs, and they are going to follow that acronym because we're in government, because we love acronyms. So it is AIDA. So not only a bad musical by Elton John and a great opera, AIDA is going to stand for attention, interest, desired action. So that first paragraph of the cover letter is attention. We're going to tell them how we heard about the job. Why is that important to the employer? It's really important so they know how you heard about the job, so they know how to spend their advertising dollars. When I had my business, I was spending $1,300 a month on Monster to advertise a position. I was spending about $30 a month to host my own website. So in order to help determine how my best advertising dollars were spent, it was really key to find out how the individual heard about the position. If more were hearing about it from Monster, maybe it's worth my $1,200, $1,300 a month. If more are hearing about it from my website, that's about $30 a month to host, then clearly I'm making a decision on where my advertising dollars are spent. Also, if it's through an individual who's a good worker, so a personal inside track, again, real key to find out. So, attention, how'd you hear about it? Interest. What would that second paragraph be about interest? What do you think we're putting in that? Here's what qualifies me for this job. Another quiet moment in the presentation. Employers are like a romantic relationship. What the heck is she talking about? They want to be flattered. So when you first start out in a dating relationship, aren't you really, really nice? And don't you dress up really nice? And don't you say nice things about the individual because you want them to like you and you want them to keep going out on dates with you, right? Hopefully. Same thing with the employer. You want to find something about them that you're going to say that's nice and it's going to be flattering about that. So in that interest section, not I want a job, not I want a job in this field, but I want a job in this field with you because of what? What is it about that employer? What is it about that job with that employer that makes you want to work for them specifically? So maybe it's that they do great philanthropic work. Maybe they sponsor a 5K that you have been in for the past X amount of years. Maybe it's that they sponsor your kid's t-ball team. Maybe it's that you've been to that restaurant every Saturday night and you just think they provide amazing food and amazing service and a great entertainment value. Find something about them, real easy, hit the website if you can't think of anything else, get in their mission statement. What is it about them specifically that makes you want to work in that position? Desire is actually, what is it about you that makes them want to read further into that resume? So again, my analogy for that with the cover letter is, how many of you guys have been into an actual movie theater and you get there early? What do you see? Previews. And what do they do with those 3-minute snippets in that preview that you see in the movie theater? They show you the most exciting part, I heard somebody say. Right, right. So, and why are they doing that? Because they want you to come back in a couple months when the movie opens and plunk down your hard-earned, whatever it is now, $11 to see that feature film, right? Well, the cover letter is your preview for your feature film, which is the resume. So in that desire section, get that preview, get that exciting part, get that part that's going to want to make them invest their hard-earned dollars or their hard-earned time and read that resume. And then finally, action. That closing paragraph, that action paragraph in the cover letter is specifically to make them do what? Because what do we see in most cover letters for that closing sentence or that closing paragraph? How do you typically end the cover letter? Okay, so I'd like to have a face-to-face interview. All right, what else? Ways that I can be reached, okay? Anything else? Why I'm the ideal candidate. Okay, so most cover letters that I've seen close with a sentence like, I look forward to hearing from you, or I can be reached at, et cetera, and hope to hear from you soon. Now, you spent all this time on this resume preparing it and said that you're a person of action, you're a person of commitment, you're a person of follow-through. And now you've said, I look forward to hearing from you. Are the rest of your statements believable? No. How about, I will contact you on XYZ date. Make it a week from wherever, whenever you apply or send the resume or whatever. And then follow up. So again, when I had the business, my employees knew not to let them get through to me necessarily, but they were tasked with recording every single person who did that follow-up. And I absolutely used those people on that list who made the statement of action and who followed through on that statement of action. Those were the people I called in for interviews. So be a person of action. A couple other closing documents. Thank you letter. Again, only about 48% of individuals after an interview send a thank you letter. We absolutely want to be the people who are going above and beyond and doing that thank you letter. And what are we going to put in that thank you letter? Thank them for their time, all right? So we're going to compliment the business, compliment them about how the interview was conducted. Anything else? Reiterate desire. Fantastic. When do I start? All right. All right, so we're doing the follow-up calls to check on that, hopefully. And now we've got the thank you note. How many of you guys have been to an interview and you're driving home and you're like, oh, man, I forgot to say that. That's what I should have said. How many of you guys have done that? Oh, like I'm the only one. Okay. Or you were like, man, they never asked me that question. I never got the chance to tell them that because they didn't ask me that question. That thank you note is your opportunity to include that information that you forgot and you remembered on the drive home, or that they never asked and you think would be valuable for you to impart. So that's another way for you to hit that. Final document that only about 10% of the population uses is what's called an olive branch note or a big girl or big boy note. And what that is you've done your thank you note, you've done your follow-up call to the employer. They told you they were going to make a hiring decision within 2 weeks. It's now been 3 weeks. So you send this note out to say, it is now XYZ date, and I realize that you have probably made your hiring decision and have gone with another candidate. I just want to reiterate again how much I admire your company, how much I enjoyed our time speaking, and I hope if another position comes up in your company that you would consider me for such. I have personal experience with that note that it works. It happened for me with my county job, and I have multiple experiences with that at the county with the candidates that I helped where that big boy, big girl olive branch note actually did help them secure a position. Will it happen every time? No. But again, why would you not want to take every possible opportunity, every possible tool you can use to help our individuals with disabilities find employment? All right. I got 3 minutes for questions.
Why is the 1-inch margin important?
So again, it's standard practice for that. If you needed to go to 3/4 of an inch, is it a huge deal? Maybe not. The only problem where it comes in, again, is for a human, not a big deal, but for those applicant tracking systems, it can sometimes be an issue. Other questions?
Is it okay to refer to personal conversations in the note?
Sure, you can do that. I mean, again, we would probably want to focus more on something that's going to be more professionally related and more job related to that specific position. But if you think it'll help them remember you, if they were if they said they were interviewing 10 candidates and maybe get a little fuzzy, it'd be okay. Just to have that kind of distinguishing feature and that you did truly remember that conversation. But if we can focus more on something that came up professionally, or again, add something that we weren't able to talk about that was more professionally related, probably where we want to go.
Should the thank you be an email or a handwritten note?
Fantastic question. Got to throw it out to the audience. When it comes to the thank you note, should they be emailed or should they be written by hand? Written by hand. So in most cases, we do want to do the written by hand because it's going to show that more personal approach. However, if the individual said that you were, if the hiring manager or the whatever manager that was doing the interview said, I'm going to be making the decision in the next 48 hours, probably should email. We love our postal service workers, but in order to make sure that they get it in a timely fashion, we wanted to probably do email on that point. There was another question over here.
What is the minimum amount of work you'd put on a resume?
So, again, if it was a week, probably not. But if it was at least a month or two, we want to take credit for that experience so we can get something on there if the work experience is scant.
What do you submit if asked for an online or email application?
That's a great question. Anytime that we're filling out the online application and they have a place where you can have that ability to submit documents or attach documents, that for sure is where we want to do the cover letter and the resume, even if they're not requiring the cover letter and the resume. If you've taken the time to develop it and it's adhering to the DAG resume tip sheets, which you've learned about today, and it fits all those, then we for sure want to attach those, the cover letter and the resume. Now, if they've talked about an email beyond that, you can try and find, again, when we talked about that assessment tool and finding those 5 stories or things that we can amplify and give our unique experiences and fit the STAR behavioral method with those behavioral interview questions. What I may do is take a chunk out of that, maybe take 1 or 2 examples out of that, something that's going to be salient and resonate with the employer, and talk about those specifically, and then say, you can refer to my resume that's attached and see even more examples of how I can best help your company. One more question?
How many years of experience should be on a resume?
Okay, so if a person has a lot of work history, so again, we want to probably just use the last 10 to 15 years. However, if it's one job, and that comprises that whole 10 to 15 years, and you need to show another example that would be more relevant to that job you're applying for, then you could go beyond that. Thank you guys, you've been a great audience. Appreciate your attention.